Hello, welcome to today's tutorial. Today we're going to be learning how to do the VHS camcorder effect efficiently through After Effects. This project will aim to emulate the look of Hi-8 videotape, which is a very popular tape from the late 90s used for camcorders and home videos. You may have seen the effect around before, but today we're going to be trying to replicate it. Now today's effect can be used in many different ways, including but not limited to analog horror, home videos, or just having fun. It's up to you. So anyways, let's get started. What you want to do is you want to click New Comp from Footage and select your footage. Once you've loaded your footage into After Effects, what you want to do is you want to right-click the gray empty space, click Composition Settings, and you want to change the width and the height to 534 by 400. When you do this, you'll realize that the footage that we have is more or less a lot bigger than the actual area. So what we want to do is we want to right-click the footage in the timeline, transform, and then fit to comp height. That way our footage will match the comp height exactly, meaning you don't have to do some cropping. Now what you want to do is you want to duplicate our footage twice, as so. And you want to set two of these videos to the mode luminosity and the other one to the mode color. This way we can work with our color and our black and white footage separately. Now what you want to do is you want to select your color footage and you want to add a brightness and contrast effect to your footage. Then you want to add 30 to your brightness. Secondly, you want to add some noise from noise and grain and turn up the effect to 20%. Now you can mess around with the amount of color noise that you want, but I'm going to stick to 20. Next, you want to add a directional blur to your footage. Set the direction of the blur to 90 degrees and the blur length to roughly about 30 pixels. That way it allows us to create the kind of distorted color effect you see in most VHS footage. Now you may have noticed by now that nothing's changed since we first dropped in our footage, and that's because for this effect to work, we need to add some effects to our luminosity. So select the top luminosity footage. Then you want to add the noise effect to your footage and change the amount of noise to around 7%. Add the black and white filter to your footage. Then copy paste it down to your other luminosity footage. I'm now starting to see that this really wasn't a good example of footage, so I'm going to quickly change that. Here we are, here's some better footage. Now here's a little tidbit you can use to check to see if your directional blur has worked. With my footage, I have a little bit of color bleed. You can see it here with the black into the red. If I turn on my directional blur, you can see that color bleed becomes even more. Now we get this effect because we are blurring out our colors, making them less hard to see. If you want to show this color bleed even more, you can simply just drag your footage up to the right. Boom! Now you can see this color bleed even more. Now that I've demonstrated the color bleed using our color footage, I'm going to quickly switch back to my original footage. Now, click on the bottom luminosity footage. We're going to add a directional blur to it. Set the blur to 90 degrees and the blur length to about 7. This way it kind of adds a slight soften effect / defocus effect to our footage. If I turn it off, it becomes clear again. If I turn it on, it's no longer visible. You may realize if you study VHS footage, there's this kind of black line on the very left side on a lot of the footage. That's an artifact of the color bleed, and we're going to emulate that right now. Go up to Layer, New, and click on Solid. Make sure that the color is white, and click OK. Now add a gradient ramp to that white solid. Now set the position of the start of the ramp to 0, 0, and 131. Then set the end position of the ramp to 4.5 and 131. Finally, set it to multiply. This way we get that nice little bit of color bleed artifact on the left side. Now you may be looking at your footage and you might be thinking, yeah, sure, it may look a little bit more like it, but it doesn't have that signature Hi-8 sharpening to it that makes everything look really hard to look at. Well, you're right. Select everything in your timeline, right-click and click Pre-Compose. We're going to name it something like Original. Now right-click the gray area, go to Composition Settings, and change the resolution to 768 by 576. Then right-click, Transform, Fit to Comp. This way we can kind of emulate the VCR upscaling that happens to VHS footage, because all VHS footage is played back at not its internal resolution, but the VCR's resolution, which is usually higher than the VHS tape. Now, when you are upscaling this kind of footage, you want to make sure that you've got bicubic set. This way, the footage is slightly more sharper, which can help add to the effect. Now we're going to add some slight color grading and add our sharpening effect. Add a hue saturation to the pre-comp and change the master hue to -3. We're now going to add an unsharp mask to our footage. Set the amount to around 150 and the radius to 2. Finally, we're going to add a brightness and contrast effect. Set the brightness to 10 and the contrast to 15. And well, for the main point, you're done. Now you can hit render, and there you go. You have your own Hi-8 emulated effect. It does look pretty good. However, if you want to have that date and time that's in the bottom right corner, stick around because we'll add that in now. Now to start off, you want to head back into your pre-comp, and then you want to download the Sony Cam original font that I've linked in the description. It's free. It's a font that closely recreates the font that Sony uses for their VHS camcorders. Once you've installed your font, you want to click on the text tool, click anywhere in the space, and select the Sony Cam font. Set the font size to around 20 pixels, and the font's vertical height to 110%. Set the fill color to DE, and our stroke color to black. Then you want to add the fill over stroke option and set our stroke width to 3 pixels. Now, type in a date, but when you type in this date, make sure to follow this format. Month, space, date, space, year. This is the kind of date formatting that Sony uses for their camcorders. Now, select the text and hit A on your keyboard to pull up the anchor position. Now zoom into your anchor point and you want to align this red square to the middle of our anchor point. You can do this by dragging around the numbers here. Now once you have it lined up, you want to press P on your keyboard to bring up the position tab, and you want to set the position to 302.5 and 331.0. Next up, we want to add a noise effect to our text and set the amount of noise to 15%. Next, you want to add a directional blur. Set the direction to 90 degrees and the blur length to 0.1. This way it very slightly softens our text. Now we want to duplicate our text. Now you want to move this text to the following position: 305 by 361. Then you want to replace the text with the following: underscore underscore colon underscore underscore colon underscore underscore. Now you want to duplicate the text again, and while having that selected, change the text size to 14 and the text tracking to -8. Then press P to bring up the position tab and set the position to 380 by 361. Then replace the text with AM. You could also do PM. It all depends on which one you want to do. I'm going to do AM. Now you might be thinking, oh wow, we're done. However, if you go to example footage, you'll see that the unsharp mask has applied to the text as well, which makes it look quite ugly. So we're going to fix that real quick. Head back into your original pre-comp, and while holding shift, select your text. Then right click, hit pre-comp, and just call it text. Now Control X your text to cut it from the original pre-comp, then Control V to paste it into the timeline. And you'll see that it's quite small. That's because it's using the resolution of our original pre-comp. So right click it, transform, fit to comp. And as a final measure, you want to copy and paste the brightness and contrast from the original into the text. And there you have it. You've now officially created a VHS camcorder effect in After Effects. Bye!